Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Voice is, it's all right. I had a wedding this weekend, so it's kind of rebuilding itself back up after a fun Saturday with friends. This Packers team knows how to make it interesting. You know what it is? It's Packers, Jacksonville. Instant reaction after Green Bay wins 30-27 in a nail-biter. There's so many different angles and things to cover in this. Certainly not all good ones for Green Bay, whether you're talking offense, defense, a special teams blunder in the first half on a punt return, and then the injuries to two big names for Green Bay. I don't know where we start. Again, these aren't, scripted, the instant reaction right after the game videos. And Malik Willis has a set of stones, He comes into the game, Jordan Love hobbling around, came up lame after a pass attempt where he kind of just landed awkwardly in the first half. He gutted it out as long as he could. Willis comes in the second half, and at least I wasn't thinking, oh no, because we've seen Malik Willis go 2-0 as a starter, and we know kind of what the blueprint was in those games against Indianapolis and Tennessee, and it featured a very heavy ground game for Green Bay. That pass to Jaden Reed, it may look easy, but quarterbacks will tell you sometimes the toughest passes are when a guy is streaking wide open down the field. It's not like a little 5-yard dump off. Like Willis had to hit Reed in stride, hit the open spot. It was a perfect pass. Now, it's one you expect him to make. But again, in that moment, Willis wasn't expecting to play today. That pass to Jaden Reed on the final drive to get Green Bay into field goal range was just so clutch. He had the little dump down for a touchdown pass to Tucker Kraft when everyone in the building and everyone watching on TV thought it was going to be a handoff to Josh Jacobs, and Tucker Kraft waltzed into the end zone for a TD. And I'll be honest, I'll put my hand up. When Green Bay was up 27-17 in the fourth quarter, I thought it was over. I really did. I thought what we've seen from Jeff Hafley's defenses in the second half of games this year, primarily in the last 4 weeks where they've given up 3, 6, and 3 points to the opponents, again in the second half of the last 4 weeks. I recognize that Jacksonville had put up more points than any other team in the second half that Green Bay's faced in the last 4 weeks, but I thought it was over. And for a Jacksonville team that's 2-5, now 2-6, I don't think anyone would have blamed them if they just rolled over and called it quits. So you do have to give Trevor Lawrence and company some credit because that offense just kept chipping away, and they make it 27-27 with less than 2 minutes to go, and Green Bay with their backup quarterback able to get into field goal range. And Brandon McManus, even though this one was a chip shot, 2 games for Green Bay, 2 field goals to win it and walk it off as time expires. So this team, they know how to make it interesting. I do think we should start, or I guess if that was the start, we should layer in the injuries. Jordan Love, they said, was a groin. On the surface, that might sound good, because you're not talking about like the knee sprain or an ACL or an MCL or something like that. But those can linger. And when he exited the game in the second half and gave way to Malik Willis, Love couldn't even make it off the field. He made it close to the sideline and then just laid down on his back for a couple of minutes before getting helped off. And he was uncomfortable after that. Was it the opening drive or the second drive? When he threw that pass and came down awkwardly, you could tell he wasn't scooting around at 100%. And this is an offense that loves play action. They love to go under center, bootleg out Jordan Love to the left, bootleg him out to the right. Just like it's not an offense that's dictated around, a bunch of shotgun sets or pistol sets where the quarterback's a statue in the pocket and he's dissecting a defense. Matt LaFleur likes to get his quarterbacks out on the run, kind of flush the pocket, move it around, keep a defense guessing. LaFleur said coming out of the halftime locker room that Jordan couldn't move and that it was going to change what they did on offense. And, unfortunately, he couldn't make it the rest of the way. But, again, Malik Willis got a set of stones on him. Comes in and cool, calm, collected. And I do think that first touchdown drive helped a lot. Josh Jacobs seems to do his best work when the opposing defense knows that he's getting the ball. And it doesn't make any sense. There's no logic behind it. But Malik Willis comes in, and Jacksonville has to think like, okay, obviously things change here. The Packers trust Malik Willis. He started 2 games this year, but they're going to try to run the ball. And Green Bay wasn't playing with the lead. They weren't playing with, that 27-17 lead at the time when Willis came in. They had plenty of work left to do just to take the lead and then win the game. And on one of those, early drives with Willis in, Green Bay goes 8 plays, 80 yards. 7 of the 8 plays were runs. And it finishes with Josh Jacobs having his longest run of the season on a 38-yard touchdown. And I think it is so demoralizing for a defense. I mean, just gut-wrenching. When you know the opposing team's offense is facing a bunch of adversity, and in this case, it's Jordan Love being out and Malik Willis coming in, the backup quarterback, and they're going to feature the ground game, and that's how they're going to try to carve a path to victory, and you still can't stop it, it is demoralizing. Green Bay knew they were going to run. Jacksonville knew Green Bay was going to run. They still couldn't stop it for the most part. 8-play, 80-yard drive, capped by Josh Jacobs' longest run of the season, a 38-yard TD, and they ran it 7 times on that drive. That helps alleviate any pressure Malik Willis may have felt on his shoulders, knowing I'm going to need to make some throws. And he made the big one to Jaden Reed on the final drive. But he also knows in the back of his mind, we've got a really good ground game to lean on because this offensive line's paving holes. That helps out a lot. Had Willis come into the game and Green Bay's down 14, the game script changes. Second half down 14, third quarter, you're going to be forced to pass more. You just are. And so Willis came in at a time where Green Bay was afforded the luxury that they didn't have to hurry. They didn't have to force the issue with the passing game. And they were able to ease Willis into it. One of those runs on that drive was a beautiful run by Malik Willis himself. And then the other ones, I think 5 went to Jacobs and 1 went to Emmanuel Wilson. 8 plays, 80 yards, 7 runs. Alleviates a whole hell of a lot of pressure if Willis is feeling any of that on his shoulders. The Love injury, groin, could linger, and it sucks anytime it pops up. But knowing that Green Bay has its biggest game of the season to date next week for first place in the division, and you're hosting the Detroit Lions, and you've only played one division game this year, and it was at home, and you lost to Minnesota, and you don't want to start 0-2 in the division with 2 losses at home, fingers crossed that Jordan Love and, Matt LaFleur's presser, when I'm recording this, he hasn't been up at the podium yet, but I feel pretty comfortable saying he's not going to dive into details of Jordan Love's injury anyways. The other one that kind of flew under the radar on that touchdown pass by Jacksonville late in the fourth quarter, less than 2 minutes left, to tie the game, 27-27, Jaire Alexander, non-contact. I don't even want to put it out into the universe as he limped off. You hope it was like a cramp. I think it was 85 degrees at kickoff in Jacksonville, and typically you would say, Green Bay, coming from Wisconsin, late October game, not used to the hot weather. It's been a pretty warm fall so far in the great state of Wisconsin, and specifically in Green Bay. Like, they hosted Houston a week ago, and it was pretty damn hot. The worry for Jaire, worst case scenario, is an Achilles injury, and you just hope it's not that. You hope it's not that. It was a jump ball to Evan Ingram. Jaire couldn't even really get up because you could see he felt the pain as soon as he went to make a move and make a play on the ball. And I'll have to go back and watch the game, but I thought on the rare occasions that Jaire Alexander was targeted in this one, he was phenomenal for Green Bay. He was the Jaire Alexander we've come to expect. But you're talking about an injury to Love. They said it was a groin. You don't know the severity. And an injury to Jaire Alexander, you don't know what it is either, but could be bad. You just don't know. That's 2 of the bigger names on this roster. You don't want to see anyone get hurt. It was awesome to see Devontae Wyatt return today, and he dove on that fumble that was forced by Edgerrin Cooper. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But when you're talking about your future, well, not even your future, your franchise quarterback, and then your all-pro caliber corner, and there's a lot of fogginess surrounding what the injuries could be and the severity of them, it does take away a little bit of the shine of what was a nail-biting win on the road against a Jacksonville team that refused to go away. Mitch, I am on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate all the support as we build this up. Packers take out Jacksonville 30-27. Brandon McManus walks it off with a chip shot field goal. I shouldn't even say chip shot because if I had to go out there and attempt that, I'd probably brick it. I'm probably not making that field goal. Give me a couple attempts maybe. Other notes, I know I always say we bounce around on this. The opening drive, I thought when you play a team like Jacksonville that's 2-5, they're down in the dumps, it's important to stack up a couple kill shots early on. Don't let this game get to the fourth quarter in a tie game or you're losing or you're up one possession where Jacksonville has some hope and then anything can happen in the final 15 minutes. I was really hoping this was a game where Green Bay wouldn't look as sloppy and they'd piece together some really crisp scoring drives early and kind of just suck the life out of Jacksonville. And it just didn't happen. And you go back to what we talked about in the game against Houston and in other games this year, like when they played Minnesota and tried to come back late and came up short because of mistakes that were made early on. There is a bunch of sloppy play going on, and I've used that word a lot the last couple of weeks with Green Bay, and it's not just on offense. It's kind of filtering down to the special teams as well. The opening drive for Green Bay, they're moving it down the field, 3rd and 3, a shotgun handoff to Josh Jacobs. He rips off a 16-yard run, and it's called back for holding. And so Green Bay gets a second shot at it on 3rd down after the penalty. It's an incomplete pass by Love, and they end up folding that drive. But there was another flag for another holding had they converted it anyways. And I think there have been way too many times, and I love this offensive line, I do, but I think there have been way too many times this year where Green Bay appears to be piecing together a strong drive that looks like it's going to result in some sort of points, and then the offensive line has a holding or an illegal shift or an illegal hands to the face or a couple of false starts, and it just blows up a drive. It just blows it up. Now, maybe on that 3rd and 3, Josh Jacobs doesn't gain 16 yards if Sean Ryan doesn't hold on the right side because the run for Jacobs went right past Sean Ryan in between right guard and right tackle. But you still got to bite the bullet, not hold, and see what happens. There have just been way too many penalties this year on the offensive line when Green Bay appears to be gaining some momentum on drives. And then the second drive could have started, I think, around the 12, 11-yard line, and instead it starts inside the 2 because Jaden Reed at the last second decides not to fair catch and field a punt and let it bounce, and it bounces perfectly out of bounds for Jacksonville inside the 2. And was it against Houston or Arizona? It was either last week or 2 weeks ago. You had Keyshawn Nixon field a punt, or not field a punt, when he should have, and it ended up hitting, was it Ballantyne for Green Bay? And I think it was against Houston, and Houston dove on it, and it was one where Nixon needed to run up and field it or at least yell for his teammates to get out of the way. And then later on in that same game, Jaden Reed fielded a punt while he was running backwards in between his own 1-yard line in the end zone. And so we're still seeing these mistakes on special teams. It was the kicking was the problem, and now McManus seems to be solid, knock on wood. And now we're seeing stuff in the punt return game that's just unfathomable. It's like special teams 101, things that Green Bay continues to screw up. And so you just, these penalties, these little brain farts that they're having on special teams, that adds up. And it's just some sloppy play. Even Jordan Love this was the worst red zone defense in the NFL in Jacksonville entering play today. And Green Bay started 1 for 4 in the red zone. And one of those 3 that didn't result in 6 for Green Bay was an interception by Jordan Love. And every quarterback's going to throw picks, and you can live with certain interceptions. It's the head scratchers that'll drive you insane. And the interception Jordan Love had today in the red zone was a head scratcher. I think he was on the right hash, thrown all the way back to the left side on just a bad read and a bad throw, and a good read by the Jacksonville cornerback, but it was one of those silly interceptions. Like the one where he was targeting Christian Watson against Houston a week ago, and there was a defender behind Watson and a defender in front of Watson, and you're just wondering, what are we seeing here that we're making that throw? And I love that Love, no pun intended, has an abundant amount of confidence. The interceptions need to go down. We all know that. But every quarterback's going to throw them. It's the ones that you watch the replay and you're like, what was the thought process here? Those are the ones you have to eliminate. Those are the ones that can kill you. And it came in the red zone, and thankfully, Trevor Lawrence, who looked pretty good in the second half, was miserable in the first half, hasn't really had a great year. Neither has the Jacksonville offense. Gave it right back. Just kind of threw like a warm-up pass to Xavier McKinney, who was like, okay, I haven't had a pick in 2 weeks. Thank you. I'll take this one for what is 6th of the year. 6 interceptions in 8 games now for Xavier McKinney. And so thankfully Jacksonville, bad teams will make bad plays at bad times. And Lawrence, when Jacksonville seemed to have some momentum after forcing a turnover in the red zone against Green Bay's offense, just gave it right back with Xavier McKinney's interception. So it was sloppy at times. Green Bay's 6-2. I would say in the last 2 weeks, in large part, and this isn't a bad thing because it's fixable, and you're still 6-2. But I would say 4 games over 500 the last 2 weeks. Green Bay, for large chunks of those games against Houston and then in this one against Jacksonville, have not looked the part of a 6-2 team. Like, 2 walk-off field goals are awesome. And you were lucky to get one against Houston, who to me is a pretty damn good team. Jacksonville, not so much. I think if, let's say Jordan Love's good to go next week and the groin heals up fine, if Green Bay plays next week against Detroit, and I know it's at Lambeau, if they play against the Lions how they have played at times against Houston and now Jacksonville in back-to-back weeks, that's not going to be pretty. I can tell you right now that's not going to be pretty because Detroit is a well-oiled machine. I know they don't have Aiden Hutchinson. They had some problems today against Tennessee with a pass rush. They're going to have to adjust, figure that out, maybe make a trade. I don't know. But they put up, I think it was 52 on Tennessee. It's an incredible offense, a well-coached team led by Dan Campbell. Ben Johnson pushing the buttons on offense. The defense is still pretty good. They really calmed things down and solved the riddle of the Tennessee Titans after those first couple of drives in the first quarter. Detroit's too damn good to play as sloppy as Green Bay has at times in the last 2 weeks. I thought you could make a case that Houston was that good, but Detroit, I'm telling you, Detroit is on another level. I think if you polled 100 people right now and gave them truth serum and asked them who the best team in the NFC was, not NFL, but the NFC, I think you're going to get 8 out of every 10 are going to say Detroit right now is the best team in the NFC. San Francisco's a game below 500, still waiting for CMC to get back. Ayuk's out for the year. Debo was dealing with pneumonia. That's a lot of their big weapons missing. I expect San Francisco to figure it out, but right now you can't say they're the best in the NFC. You're not going to say it's Seattle. You're not going to say it's Philly, even after an impressive win at Cincinnati. You're not going to say it's Dallas. Maybe you make a case for Green Bay. Maybe there's still some people, even after back-to-back losses, that think Minnesota is. But I think 80%, if you polled 100 people, would say it's Detroit. And so you can't be as sloppy as you've been in back-to-back games next week against the Lions. It will not end well. And so it's awesome to be 6-2, and to be 6-2 and not feel like you've maxed out, right? Like they've won 4 in a row now, right? Rams to start it, and then Jacksonville to end it with Arizona and Houston sandwiched between. So you've won 4 in a row. There are parts of Green Bay that look really good, but there's these lapses throughout these games the last 2 weeks where it's like there's still plenty of room to improve. I'm glad that they're still winning these games and that there's plenty of room for improvement. I don't want my team to be at the halfway point with a good record but playing their best ball and looking like, man, this is as good as it's going to get. And so you kind of take that good with the bad and just hope that these, sloppy penalties by the offensive line, the lapses in judgment right now in the punt return game that we've seen in back-to-back weeks, that those get figured out and that it's not just an issue for the long run the rest of the season, because it can't be, because you're not going to get away with that to this degree in the playoffs. It's not going to happen if you have legitimate thoughts of making a run to New Orleans in February. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate all the supporters. We build the channel up. Packers escape Jacksonville with 30-27. You wait to hear what the word is on the injuries to Jordan Love and Jaire Alexander. Defensively, wasn't great in that second half. Obviously, I think the one thing I keep going back to, and you probably go back to it too, we all sound like a broken record. 0 pass rush at times. And more specifically, 0 pass rush from some of these defensive ends. I saw Rashawn Gary doing like a basketball crossover celebration pre-snap when he was standing up. I don't know what that was in the first half. It like kind of made me laugh, but like Rashawn Gary didn't really have an impact on this game. Preston Smith had a couple of quarterback pressures early in the first quarter. He didn't do much. Lucas Van Ness made a tackle downfield on a great hustle play after like a 17-yard gain by Jacksonville. But if that's your best play, I mean, Lucas Van Ness didn't do much of anything. Lucas Van Ness has been pretty quiet all season long outside of that game against Tennessee. And the one big play that we did see where Green Bay's pass rush hit home came from the rookie who I probably annoy some of you guys with by how much I bring him up, Edgerrin Cooper, blowing things up in the fourth quarter in a huge spot, a strip sack of Trevor Lawrence inside their own 5-yard line that Devontae Wyatt jumps on, and then Green Bay scores a touchdown right after that. Green Bay, that's when I thought it was over. They score that touchdown. They go up 27-17. They had 2 touchdowns in 1 minute and 15 seconds. And I will say this about the defense, because you can nitpick a lot of things today, and some of it's not even nitpicking. It just flat out wasn't good at times. And I thought they got way too conservative. When Green Bay was up 27-17, I thought the game was over. I also think many of the Packers thought the game was over and that Jacksonville would just throw up the white flag and call it quits. Here's the difference. I'm watching the game. I'm not wearing the helmet, wearing the jersey on the field. It's okay if I think the game is over when Green Bay's up 27-17 against a lowly Jacksonville squad. I have no bearing on the outcome of the game. It's not okay when the Packers also think it's over and they have a direct impact on how the final result manifests and comes to be. And it really felt like Green Bay got really conservative defensively. You know, on offense, I give them a little bit of a pass because you did have your backup quarterback in, and you did have a touchdown drive where it was 8 plays, 80 yards, and you ran it 7 times, and it worked fine. I think the offense got a little conservative too, but would that have been the case if Jordan Love was in? Probably not. So I give the offense a little bit of a pass. The defense was like doing that shit where they were like willing to give up 10, 15 yards. And there were a couple of long developing plays with routes down the field for Trevor Lawrence that he connected on those final 2 drives. And the reason he was able to do that was because Green Bay had 0 pass rush. And so the one time it hits home with Edgerrin Cooper, and then you go back to like Love's interception in the red zone, and then Lawrence gives it right back with a pick to McKinney. I think if there's one thing to really circle in on with this defense that we've known all along, and it really got hammered home in this one, for whatever reason, this defense feels like every single time the game could use a game-altering play from Jeff Hafley's group that they deliver. Just about every single time. You're like, man, we could use a game changer here. One that kind of tilts the game in our direction, or at least gives us Uncle Mo heavily back in our favor. And it seems like almost every time this year where Green Bay could use that sort of play, the defense delivers. You know, they score, they take the lead against Jacksonville. Jacksonville gets the ball back in the fourth quarter, and their offense had slowly started to gain some momentum. And I was thinking it. I was like, we could, maybe I'm being greedy. Maybe I'm being a little bit asking for too much, but we could use one of those game-wrecking plays. And here's Edgerrin Cooper with the strip sack, and there's Devontae Wyatt jumping on it, and there's Green Bay scoring a play or two later. I think it was the very next play when the offense comes back out on the field. The touchdown pass, little dump to Tucker Kraft. And that's what I love about this defense. Came into this one on Sunday against Jacksonville, leading the NFL in takeaways, and piled up a couple more in this one. Bad teams will make bad plays at bad times. That was a bad one for Trevor Lawrence on the strip sack inside his own 5-yard line in what was a one-possession game at the time. And again, you tip your cap because they rallied all the way back to tie it late. And then Malik Willis makes that one throw on a dime to Jaden Reed, and then McManus walks it off. Yeah, and Josh Jacobs, phenomenal in the second half. I already said it. I love that Josh Jacobs always falls forward. I know a lot of people have said, like, man, it just doesn't feel the same without Aaron Jones, and Jacobs doesn't provide you the receiving element to the degree that Aaron Jones did. When I have buddies who tell me that, I always say, you know what? This isn't a knock on Aaron Jones or, A.J. Dillon or any running back for the Packers, but one strength of Josh Jacobs is how many, runs for -1, -2 yards do you see with him? Not many. And that's a credit to the offensive line as well, but Jacobs always seems to fall forward. And then again, I don't know how it's possible, but he seems to look his best when everyone knows he's getting the ball. And that's primarily been in the game against Tennessee and Indianapolis when Malik Willis was starting, and then when Willis came in for an injured Jordan Love in this one. Like, everyone knew they were going to try to run Josh Jacobs to the finish line if they could, and Jacksonville still couldn't stop it. And I just think that's incredible to have a running back like that. Is at his best when that light is directly shining on him and everyone knows he's going to touch the ball. One other offensive player I want to hit on, we bounce around in these instant reaction videos. Romeo Doubs, early in the first half, feasted on a couple of catches. He had a gorgeous catch down the sideline where he didn't put his hands up till late, so the corner had no chance to try to react. And it reminded me, the catch, I'm not comparing the player, the catch reminded me of one that Devontae Adams would make when he and Rodgers were just always in sync on those sideline passes, where Devontae waits to put his hands up to the last second, and it almost just like suctions into his hands, and the corner's like turning around, but the ball's already over his head. You know what I'm talking about? Dobbs had one of those, and he drew a pass interference call in the first half. On a savvy play by him, it was PI. He sold it, though, to really make sure there was no doubt that the flag would get thrown. Next play, Josh Jacobs ran in a touchdown. Romeo Doubs has been a monster since his suspension. And I tread a little lightly here because, if the reports are true, it was Romeo Doubs frustrated with his role, not happy with the amount of targets he was having, and he gets suspended for a game. And since he's come back, he's been targeted early and often, 8 for 94 against Houston a week ago. I think he had 3 for 72 today, but he had more than the 3 targets. I think he had 6, 7, 8 targets, somewhere around there. And he's been feasting. He's found the end zone a couple of times in recent games. I say I tread lightly because you don't want to set the precedent that, like, hey, if you complain, we'll end up giving you the ball more. I don't want that to be how this is viewed for Romeo Doubs' situation. I just want to view it as, like, if he needed the suspension that one game to kind of reflect and recognize that wasn't the route to go or how to carry himself, I'm glad it worked out because he has been an absolute monster. And arguably Green Bay's, I don't even think it's arguable. It's either him or Tucker Kraft. Since Romeo Doubs' suspension and then his return, he's been the most reliable pass catcher and target for Jordan Love because Jaden Reed's had 3 kind of stinkers in a row. Christian Watson's been pretty quiet. I thought they'd get him going early today. I thought it'd be a big Christian Watson game, and it was like a medium game kind of, right, for Watson. Maybe that's different if Love's able to not look like he's playing on one leg and then exits the game in the second half, but not going to give excuses. Romeo Doubs has been Mr. Reliable since his return from the suspension. 6-2, I'm just looking ahead to Detroit, and you can't really even say anything about the game against the Lions until we know what's going on with Jordan Love and, of course, Jaire Alexander. So 2 touchdowns and 115. I thought the game was over. Jacksonville ends up tying it at 27, and then Malik Willis makes the throw. You're 6-2. We can pick apart things if we want. That's fine. I just did it in this video that's now over 28 minutes, and we'll wrap it up right now. The most important thing is they're flying from Jacksonville back to Green Bay 6-2, and they got the win. And now it's just fingers crossed that these injuries aren't as severe as they may be, right? So that's the hope. Green Bay wins 30-27. Now you turn the page and you get ready for a monster of a showdown next Sunday. Fox's game of the week, 3:25 p.m. kickoff. The Motor City Kitties coming to town. Green Bay, Detroit for first place in the NFC North. It is Mitch M on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time.